Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. From the DC universe comes one of the most legendary superheroes of all time, with a familiar origin, told with a twist that endears the character to a large segment of fandom that have waited for representation to come on a worldwide stage. We're talking about Black Superman. The concept of Black Superman comes from the original Superman created by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. The character debuted in 1938 in Action Comics #1, published by National Allied Publications, the direct predecessor of modern-day DC Comics. The Superman origin begins with the planet Krypton and focuses on Jor-El and Lara, who place her infant son Kal-El into a ship to save him from Krypton's imminent destruction. That ship crash lands on Earth, where Kal-El is rescued by the Kents in Smallville, Kansas. Kal-El becomes Clark Kent and later Superman, the greatest hero that Earth has ever known. The first unofficial Black Superman appeared in Animal Man number 23, published in 1990. That character was known as Sunshine Superman and was part of a team of heroes that were previously unpublished in DC Comics. The second Black Superman appeared in mid-1998 and was the Superman from DC Comics' Tangent line. But that character was Superman in name only and had a different origin as well as a different appearance. The third Black Superman was the Superman of Earth D, who appeared in a one-shot in 1998. In the story, a retired Barry Allen, also known as the Flash, comes back to warn the present-day Justice League about the Anti-Monitor's impending attack, which ultimately leads to the Crisis on Infinite Earths storyline. Flash instead found himself on Earth D, where the world's greatest heroes were from much more diverse cultural backgrounds. Green Arrow was Native American, Wonder Woman had dark skin, and the Flash was Asian. Both Superman and Supergirl were black. The most well-known Black Superman was the hero from Earth 23. That Superman was Calvin Ellis, who first appeared in 2008 and was directly inspired by President Barack Obama. Ellis was not only his Earth's greatest protector, he was also the President of the United States. But that Superman was followed later by Val Zod, who was the Superman of Earth 2. While many comic book fans were hopeful that a Black Superman would eventually be portrayed on the big screen, nothing official was coming out of Warner Brothers until speculation began to ramp up in 2019, thanks to actor Michael B. Jordan. Jordan made it known that he wanted to portray Superman, and that he actually pitched the idea to Warner Brothers executives. Those rumors led to fans openly debating the idea of a black man portraying the Man of Steel. But nothing became of the story until late 2020 and early 2021, when Warner Brothers officially brought acclaimed writer Ta-Nehisi Coates on board to write the story. The script is not expected until late December of 2021, and Warner Brothers is reportedly searching for a director as well as a lead actor to portray the Man of Tomorrow. Michael B. Jordan has yet to confirm his attachment to the project, which is quickly becoming one of the hottest comic book discussions of 2021 and most anticipated comic book films in recent memory. And that's the lowdown on Black Superman. It's hard to be a comic book fan and not at least acknowledge Superman. I mean, he was the first. As we've said before here on the show, there was, I think, a handful of oddball characters, before the creation by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster in 1938, obviously. But no one to the degree of what we got with Clark Kent, aka Superman. He was, if you're a rock and roll fan, he's the Elvis Presley of this, of the conversation. He's the one that, yes, there was Ray Charles before Elvis, and you got to give props to Ray Charles. Yes, there was the blues guys before Elvis. I'm a big Muddy Waters guy. You can't talk about that time frame of music and not mention the blues pioneers, obviously. But for a lot of people, it all started with Elvis. For comic book guys, it starts with Superman. And again, you don't have to love it. I know plenty of comic book fans who just aren't Superman guys. They're just not into it. They just don't really care about him. He doesn't appeal to them or whatnot. So the topic of this show is Black Superman for a lot of different reasons. One, because this conversation's been had by fans for years. And I think a lot of it contains questions like why. Why has there not been a black Superman? Not just a sporadic, occasional an Elseworlds story, a random Earth Superman. And look, for obvious reasons, the time period being 1938, is it going to be an African American? Probably not. Um, Siegel and Schuster just weren't. They just weren't in that direction in terms of creatively speaking. Plus, it's the time frame. We got to keep that in mind, kids. Love it or hate it, that was the time that we lived in, or that this country was in, and the chances of an African American hero gracing the pages of a comic book, even though we know now today it's the wrong way of thinking, in those days it just was not going to happen. So now the spark has been relit, as it were. The conversation's fired back up again because of the rumors J.J. Abrams is being handed another Superman, or a Superman film, and supposedly Michael B. Jordan may or may not be attached, depending on the news that you've read and the rumors that you've heard. So now the conversation, Phil, points to Black Superman. First off, how reliable do you think the rumors are? How much how much fire is there to the smoke? In other words, you think this is the real thing?
Well, I'd have to assume like there has to be something to it because I think they definitely want to try and do something different. Otherwise, I don't know why they wouldn't keep Henry Cavill on and continue um, with that franchise and do like a Man of Steel 2. But it seems like they're like going away from that franchise and completely rebooting it from the article I read.
It's interesting, isn't it? We've talked about DC a lot here on the show, and it always feels as though it's a start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. Right? Is listen, does before we even get out the gate, man, does it all boil down to, oh, here's another start and stop? Is that how it's hitting you, or maybe you've not gone there in your head with this yet?
I mean, when I first saw the announcement, I mean, clearly there's some interesting guys attached to it, like J.J. Abrams. I've enjoyed most of his movies. It's get the I think the writer on it is Ta-Nehisi Coates, and big fan of his writing. He used to write for the Atlantic. He's done some really thoughtful social and political writing. He wrote Black Panther for a little while
Mm.
for Marvel, and he wrote Captain America as well. So just having those two names attached to it makes it interesting. But am I that interesting at another Superman franchise? Nah, not that really. I feel like they should be trying to, try to do some other franchises at this point. They've got tons of characters at DC that, they haven't scratched the surface with. We've never seen in a live action movie. So, I'm ready for them to try the characters.
Yeah, I'm with that, and you're right. The DC universe is huge, and you could argue, and I don't know the count. I don't have any idea how many characters we're talking. It's a massive universe, kids. But you could probably make the statement it's as big as Marvel. Maybe one's bigger than the other. I don't have any idea. It's too many to count for me, man. But yeah, all those characters, and we've talked a lot about Marvel on the show here too. Obviously, Marvel's one of the M's. Okay, um, but when it comes to Marvel, they kicked off the cinematic universe with Iron Man. They didn't kick it off with Spider Man. I mean, for obvious reasons, they couldn't. The Sony's involved and all that other nonsense, which I call it nonsense because I want them to be 100% Marvel, but it is what it is. Um, but they kicked it off with, and I don't want to say obscure, but he was a second tier character. Iron Man was. He's not now, because holy crap, Robert Downey's the freaking man. But DC just they're continuing to go back to their big three, and that's okay. But like, we're getting another Batman movie next year with a different Batman again, like, and now Superman again. It's a different one. And dude, if you're Michael B. Jordan, it's a huge question, and we'll get into it. But just from a distance, is there any part of you that says, "Yeah, but dude, they start and stop all the time. Like, what? What am I really signing up for? Is it one and done? Is it two and done? Are they going to replace me too? Like, do you think that's crossed his mind if this is indeed moving forward?"
Uh, I don't think so. If he's attached to it, I think he's probably looking at it like, hey, I'm just in it. Let's have fun with this. Let's make a movie and let's move on. I mean, this guy is he's been attached to some things that didn't work out. I mean, he did, do that Fantastic Four movie. It
Oh
just
yeah.
didn't work. So, I mean, I don't think it'd be the end of the world. This isn't career suicide for him. Um, there's gonna be doors open to him no matter what. I did think it was really interesting that he was trying to create some superhero properties of his own that he wanted to eventually make into TV shows and movies. I saw an article about that not too long ago. And I thought I saw where he is attached to producing the Static Shock movie.
I love that. I think every fan that's ever read Static Shock has been begging for something, whether it's a TV series, a streaming service, I mean, a full feature film, something, and more than what we've got, which is not a lot, because he's such a good character. So much, it's so fun to read. I mean, the whole Milestone universe, man. Don't even get me started. How just like with the comic book boom of the time. I mean, I bought every issue of Milestone I could get my hands on because number one, it was different, and different is good to a reader, in my opinion. At least it's good to me. It stood out. Uh, Content was different. Characters were different. It was a new universe, new situations, new villains, new heroes. The words new and different always piqued my interest, especially as a comic book fan. So I was all into it. So yeah, I would love to see something what happened with Static Shock. In terms of the Superman thing, I mean, where are you in your thought process? Is this something that you ever thought you would see actually move forward? Did you think it, hey, it's 2021, man, it's only a matter of time until we get there? I mean, because this kind of came from out of nowhere, didn't it? I don't recall. It seems like there was rumblings of something earlier than this, but then now it's really took form, took shape. I mean, did you think we'd ever actually get to this point?
I could see them rebooting the movie again because I mean, I don't know. It seems like Justice League was just a failure for them. Um, so I could see them going back to the well and redoing it. Um, Now, in terms of them doing a Black Superman movie, I didn't think that would be something we would see. No.
It's crazy. I'm hitting you with some questions. It seems like I should be hitting you with it 30 to 45 minutes into it, but I'm going to get this one out of the way right now. How much do you trust DC not to screw this up? I mean, we have to
uh,
consider the possibility that this thing will, I don't want to say lay an egg, but what if they screw it up, man, you know?
well, I mean, I think it depends on the creators attached to it.
Yeah.
I don't really trust DC to follow through on things as a company, but as long as they can get good creators in, um, I think they can make a good movie. I mean, because I mean that was the case with the first Wonder Woman movie. It was attached to everything they were doing with Justice League, but that's a different creator than Zack Snyder and Patty Jenkins. And I thought she made a good movie for the first movie. I wasn't that down on the Aquaman movie. I thought the Aquaman movie was entertaining. Um, really enjoyed Shazam.
Yeah.
So I mean, they can make good movies as long as they bring in someone with a vision to bring this thing to life. And I have full trust that Ta-Nehisi Coates can write a good script. I'm not sure is JJ directing this thing or is he producing it?
I think the rumor is he's directing it.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think JJ can direct a good movie, and with a good script, I think they can make something interesting.
I mean, he wrote that Superman script several years ago, and they were close. I think they were very close to making that thing a reality. But man, if you've heard or read the synopsis on that film, man, the some of the stuff that was written was pretty far out. Like, if don't quote me on this, but I think he had a brother or something. It was an evil brother, and I'm like, what? Superman's a brother? What? Like, I don't know. Like to his credit, he wanted to put his own spin on it, which I get that. And you know, a lot of what the rumors are right now with this supposed film is that, and look, the conversation is being had out there because you know how Twitter is. Twitter is toxic. They should just rename the app Toxic because it's the same thing. And toxic fan bases are everywhere. Star Wars, comic books, wrestling, you name it, it's out there. Seems like each niche or each form of content has its own form of toxic fan base. But there's just toxic people on Twitter who just have nothing better to do all day than to just hurl nonsense at you. So a lot of the conversation being had right now is, well, why does it have to be Clark Kent? Why can't it be somebody else? And then I'm like, well, yeah, but they haven't really said if it's Clark Kent yet. And maybe it's Calvin Ellis. And Calvin Ellis, um, Black Superman, Earth 23, modeled after Barack Obama, is actually in that on that world. He is the president of the United States, and Brainiac is a computer that is like his assistant. And it's a very interesting take. Instead of Wonder Woman, it's Nubia. A lot of the heroes are black. Batman's not, which is, I think I've had that conversation off air before about why Batman can't really be black. I mean, he could, but it doesn't work out in terms of his backstory. So it's interesting to see what they'll do. Do you have a preference, Phil, as being a fan? Do you have a preference as, hey, he should or shouldn't be Clark Kent?
Um, I think if you're gonna go the route of making a Black Superman movie, I think you should go with a original character that's already created. So I see no reason why they shouldn't just go with Calvin Ellis.
Yeah.
I don't really understand why people would be so against turning Clark black. I don't, I have my beliefs on whether or not Black Superman is believable, but I don't understand why anyone would be just so against it if it was Clark Kent. I don't think it matters either way. I mean, I think if you're gonna do Calvin Ellis, go ahead and do it, and do like a multi. You could do multiverse stuff, and that would be interesting. And at least if you do the multiverse stuff, you could still keep Henry Cavill around.
Right. So let's dive into this story that hasn't, been filmed yet, because I'm curious what you think. Because if you really begin to break this thing down and really try to process it from start to finish, there's a lot of interesting questions that we haven't had answered yet. Because quite frankly, we don't have a movie yet, and we may not have one. Listen, some of the most well thought out projects, some of the coolest things that we've ever heard about, never get made. I mean, we're still talking about movies from the 90s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s that, hey, this sounded cool, this sounds cool, and the stuff never gets made. So this may or may not actually happen. I mean, we know that. So, but let's talk about some of the nuts and bolts of this. If you go with Michael B. Jordan, whether it's Calvin Ellis or Clark Kent, it doesn't really matter. If because Calvin Ellis's backstory is identical to Clark's. He is sent from Krypton, which is a dying planet. But in the Calvin Ellis story, he's found by a black couple. Do you go that route in the film? Or do you say, no, the Kents found him, or the whoever, the Ellises, whatever, and it's a white couple? Man, wouldn't that pose a whole other twist on the story, especially depending on what time frame they set this thing to happen in? It seems like a lot of, I don't want to say hurdles that you have to jump, but a lot of interesting points you could address as a filmmaker, right?
There are some interesting points. I don't really think it's believable. I don't know, man. If you got a black man with all of these incredible superpowers, um, and he is discovered in Kansas by a white family, it kind of has like some issues with it. And that isn't to say that you know a white family wouldn't bring him in and still love him and teach him in the same way, but I don't think that they could teach him a lot of the lessons that he would learn on his own later on in life as a black man because they just don't understand. They don't. There's certain things about race that they would not be able to teach him.
Mm.
And just the idea of a black man as Superman is just kind of, I don't know, especially in Kansas. Especially in Kansas, it's just kind of like, do I believe that people wouldn't be afraid of him. I absolutely
Oh,
think people would be afraid of him. I don't
right.
think it would be one of these things where he would be immediately accepted and he would become this American icon like the original Superman is. I don't know if I believe that.
And it occurs to me as we're talking about this that a lot of the conversations that we have, especially about characters, whether they're African American or not, and then whether or not they should or could be, it's so interesting that it's okay to have the conversations. We're having one now, but like it would be awesome to 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 live in a world where that conversation didn't matter because who cares? Not that it matters now. Do you see what I'm saying? It's kind of a existential crisis of a conversation here. Like it matters, but like I don't want it to matter. Like I know you don't want it to matter, but like it matters. And it's like it just would be nice to and so I guess what I'm getting at is if you put the film in a world where it doesn't matter, then you don't have to address any of that stuff. Or would that be a cop out? You know what I mean? Like if you don't address it, is that a oh come on, you had a lot to play with, you had a lot to address. Why didn't you talk about these issues instead of just kind of, breezing past them? Do you think that'd be a cop out by everybody involved?
I think it would be kind of a cop out because I mean, if that's the point, then why are you creating a Black Superman movie? If you're not going to address any of the
Mm,
differences of making him black, then why are you making a movie? I mean, you
right.
might as well just make another movie with Clark Kent. Um, and I don't want people to be like, oh, well, it's impossible to do a Black Superman movie because it completely changes the character. It is possible to make the movie, but you cannot, ignore how his race would change the character. You just can't do that. And I did not read Grant Morrison's work on Calvin Ellis. I don't know how he approached that. I mean not Calvin Ellis, but Morrison's a pretty smart writer. I don't think he would write that kind of character and not address it at all.
Right.
Um, but there are just some intrinsic things that change, once you make this character a black man because he's so powerful. It's not just because um he is a he's an out of superhero, but the thing is, Superman is different than most comic book characters because he does not cover his entire face. Um
Oh, yeah.
and having a black man as Superman and you know that he's black, you see his face, it I don't know. I just don't know. I don't think I believe that he would be viewed as the same way as by the entire country. I mean, now, of course, some people would absolutely accept him in the same way that Obama was accepted, in the way that he was inspired by Obama. Some people would accept him and be inspired by him, but some people would absolutely fear him and absolutely question, like, where's he from? How is he so powerful? You know, is he a threat?
And depending on where you set the story, look, there's a few things about the Superman mythos that you kind of have to stick to. I don't guess you have to. You can rewrite the whole thing if you want to. It's your movie, whatever. But there's kind of if you choose to go the route of the actual backstory, the ship lands in Kansas. Why? Because it's in a rural town. It's out in the middle of nowhere. You can't exactly land the craft in Harlem. You could, but if you land it in New York, there's going to be more eyes on it. It's going to be more of a, thousands of people saw this thing. It's going to be obvious, but you can crash it in Kansas. I mean, anybody reports seeing UFO in the Midwest or something, they're crackpots because they're all it's crazy rednecks or whatever who always report that stuff. So probably nobody would believe it. But if you crash it in New York City, that's kind of a big deal.
Right.
So
And where does Calvin Ellis land? Do you know?
I think it's Kansas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, I mean, and I don't know what the time period is. I mean, of course, if he ends up becoming president and all this, I'm assuming it's not in the 30s or wherever, like the original comic.
Yeah, it's no, it's not, but it is Kansas because I remember reading that and thinking, wow, they just and the couple that was drawn in the illustration of the comic kind of look like the Kents. It's an older couple. They've got like she's wearing a hat and she's got the glasses and They're in an old beat up truck, and it's kind of exactly the story. You know what I mean? But like, yeah, it's. I mean, if you crash it in Kansas and keep to the story, it's, you know, for lack of a better way to say it, he would be harder to hide. Like we know the story of Clark Kent in every medium that he's been presented in thus far, even today. You know, the Kents they hide him. They're terrified of the government taking him away from them. They're terrified of someone coming up and trying to exploit his powers or discover where he really came from. I mean, how do you hide? He's African American. He's 6'4". He's ripped. He's in great shape. Even if he's just 18, he's naturally athletic because of the yellow sun and all that stuff. He's just great, and he's got this big future ahead of him as Superman. I mean, in Kansas. Now, again, put him in a different setting. He's not really, his parents wouldn't have fear really of people coming after him. But if in Kansas, it seems like in a predominantly white rural town, how do you hide him? Like, dude, when you really get down to the nuts and bolts of this, there's a lot of things they could potentially address in this movie.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean that's definitely a question. I mean, I think he sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, and I mean, you can always just be like, well, uh, Clark was unassuming, but hey, there's not, black people aren't put in that same light. There are going to people that you know discriminate against him no matter what he does.
Right. Yeah, no matter what he does, no matter how many people he helps. You know, if you set it, I don't know, if you time it out to where, um, and obviously they'd want to keep it current. So if you time it where the movie's taking place in 2021, and I don't know how old Michael B. Jordan is, but let's say the thing crashes in, um, I don't know, let's say 95. And then we're looking at Superman today in 2021. I mean, yeah, they'll address it, but it may not be to the extent that you and I might be thinking, unless I'm dead wrong. You know, it kind of seems like we're more, is accepting the right word of a black Superman? Maybe.
Yeah, maybe. We we also live in a country that, you know, Obama was president and people did, discriminate against him. You did have idiots, trying to get him to show his birth certificate and,
Right.
prove that he's an American citizen. And he had all this other stupid stuff around his two tenures that, some other presidents didn't have to deal with.
Very true. Just the whole, like you said, the birth certificate thing, which was, just couldn't let that go. It is interesting to me how they're going to handle this. And I'll be honest with you, when I first heard the news, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what happens. I didn't have the take of, oh, well, they should or shouldn't do this. My first take was, again, with the Superman, that was my take. Like, I'm with you. I don't know why the constant need to reboot this character. Like, I mean, I thought Henry Cavill did fine. I didn't see really an issue at all. So I don't know. I don't know, man. I'm trying to figure out in my head where this may be coming from. I guess they've just got a good idea. Let's just hope that it's just a good idea. And hey, I've got a great idea for a story. Michael B. Jordan's a great actor, and he totally is. Abrams is a great director, and he totally is. Why not just run with it and do it? The story's awesome. Let's just make this film. I don't know. Hopefully, it's that easy, man. You
Well,
know,
you know, uh, Ray Fisher does not think it's that easy.
we talked a little bit before we started recording. I don't think I've heard or read any of his comments. So, what's he saying?
So I don't know if you know, but Ray Fisher has been railing against Warner Brothers and Joss Whedon and Jeff Johns, among a few people. And he's accusing them of racism. He
Mhm.
hasn't outright said what exactly happened. Um, he hasn't accused them of anything specific, like calling him a slur or anything crazy like that. But he has accused them of racism, and he's there was an investigation that went on for a little while. I don't know the results of the investigation. I don't know a whole heck a lot about it. There's a lot of they're keeping mum about it, and I don't know if that's on his side that he signed some kind of NDA. Um, and I don't know. I know it. This thing just really took off, especially once some cast members from Buffy came out and spoke on Joss Whedon, and it took off from there. Now, of course, that had nothing to do with racism. It just was kind of um, going further to paint the picture that Joss Whedon has created toxic work environments.
Right.
Um, so on the Superman thing, he tweeted out something like, "Do y'all remember that time where Walter Hamada and Warner Brothers tried to destroy a black man's creative credibility and publicly delegitimized a very serious investigation with lies? Yeah, but hey, Black Superman, right?" So
Wow.
it seems like he's saying that they are doing this to do some damage control to basically, go, no, we're not racist. See, we're giving you guys a Black Superman movie, and so we aren't racist. We actually do care about representation and inclusion. And I don't know the full story here. The timing is a little questionable.
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I don't know if there's something to that or if it's just that Ray Fisher is angry with them, so everything they do just looks bad under a microscope. I don't know.
Is it just me, or has he? Can you pinpoint specifically why he's so upset? Like I've been trying, uh, because I've often said, especially when it comes to pro wrestling, I side with the talent, not the $1 billion company, because
Right.
I think it's a bad look. I think as fans, we should always side with the talent. Um, and in this instance, I want to have the guy's back. I want to be on his side. But I mean, has he been specific enough where you're like, oh, I get it? It seems like it's like you said, it feels like he's signed something, but yet he still wants to talk. So he can't really be specific. So am I getting the
Yeah.
wrong vibe here or what?
No, I don't understand it either. I've been trying to gather what it is that he's angry about. I still don't understand. I know that he said something like they didn't want an angry black man depiction in their movie or something like that. I know he said something vague to that degree. Um, I don't know. I do know that I had some issues with like some of the race and political stuff in Wonder Woman 1984, and Jeff Johns wrote that.
Mm.
And so, that gave me some reason to pause. I never put it past anyone that, we just never know what goes on behind any of these closed doors. So I don't want to just say I don't believe the guy. Um, but I don't know the story. I don't know exactly what it is. And I think the fact that he is talking about it so much, but not giving a lot of information, isn't exactly helping him.
Yeah, because I've gotten that sense from other fans as well, where it's like, hey man, we want to be on your side. We want to hear what you have to say, but you got to start saying something at some point. And
Yeah,
dude, has he done anything since Justice League that you know of? Because I don't know that I've seen anything from him.
I haven't seen any movie that he's been in, and I mean, I'm sure people will say, well, all of this is going to discourage people from hiring him. I don't know. I don't know what his experience is. Um, but I just think we've seen other people go through certain things like this. Like I know that John Boyega came out and he said a lot about how he felt about being in Star Wars and how he felt he was treated while he was doing Star Wars. And a lot of people sided with him because he was very specific about what he was upset about. Um, and he's very adamant about everything. And I think he's a great actor. Other people are going to hire him, but this just seems like a different situation. I'm not sure what he's looking for at this point because if the investigation happened, I'm not sure what the result of the investigation is. Um, I don't know. It's a little confusing, but we couldn't talk about this without talking about his comments about the Superman movie and the timing of it.
Yeah, it does seem highly suspect. I'm going to be honest with you. I agree with you. It does seem a bit odd where the timing is on this. Do you think there might be I say rush, as if this has happened before. Like, we've not seen a black Superman ever, that I know of, ever live action. Well, there's probably been animated at some point in a Justice League something or other, but I can't swear to it. So I shouldn't say, a rush. I don't know what the better way to put it. Do you think because, hey, look, man, it's 2021, it's about time, why not do this? Do you think that's the only reason that this is being done? Dude, I still want to believe that, hey, I got a great story, we got a great director, got a great actor. Yeah, man, the stars lined up perfect. Let's do this. But I'm still going back and questioning: is there another motive to this? And dude, if the answer is yes, is that a bad thing? Like, who cares? You know what I mean? Like, it's just a movie, right?
Yeah, I mean, if there are ulterior motives here, we're never gonna know the entire truth. Um, I don't think that there should be a rush to jump to do a Black Superman movie personally. Um, I think that DC has a ton of interesting black characters that they have not put on screen. And those are some characters that I would have liked to see before I saw Black Superman, honestly. Um, I was a big fan of Jon Stewart as Green Lantern
Oh
growing
yeah.
up. And, especially with the Justice League cartoon, I thought he was one of the more interesting characters on that show. So I'm really surprised that they haven't done a Green Lantern movie starring him yet. Um, yeah, even when we talked about earlier with Static, I thought they could have made a Static movie years ago, and they never did. Um, they just started doing the Black Lightning show. Was it like in its third or fourth season?
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I thought he was an interesting character that they could have used in a movie. He could have been a member of the Justice League. There are tons of black characters that they could use. I think going out of their way to, you know, give us a black version of a character that has such a big presence in pop culture is just gonna have it's gonna come with a lot of people that are against it coming right out of the gate because people know this character one way. So they're all gonna go, well, why are we doing this? Why are we changing it? And whether that's a fair criticism or not, that's the door you open when you decide we're gonna do this project.
Plus, both sides get defensive every time because no matter what color you are, if you jump up and say, and let's say you happen to be white, but if you jump up and say, well, look, it's been this way since 38. Why are we doing this now? Why are we doing this just because it's 2021? Why are we changing this? Then someone else who doesn't agree with that person can say, oh, well, I get it. You're racist. And it's like, well, no, that's not what I meant. My question is, so no matter what anybody says, and it happens on both sides, I know, I get it. Everybody's only human, and we're not suggesting, kids, that everybody's, we're all getting along and everything's peachy. I mean, a lot of us can get along just fine, but other people, you can't have it's not a conversation, it's a freaking argument, which is ridiculous to me, over something they have no connection to other than they bought some comics and they read them, or they've watched the movies and watched this TV show before, and that's their connection to the character. But yet they'll defend it to the death, and I'm like, why? I don't know. I don't get it. I mean, dude, is it a cop out to make Superman black when he could be his own original character?
I don't think it's a cop out. I just think, for whatever reason that they decided to go with this, it's it's an ambitious idea for sure. I don't know if I would say it's a cop out though. I think in some ways you can say it's easier for them to go with a character that has a recognizable name than to, try and introduce the world to a black superhero that they may not know. But we're kind of out of the forest in terms of introducing the world to comic book characters because people are so receptive now. I mean, if people will buy into a Black Panther movie, people will buy into, I don't know, if they want to do Icon, for example, people would buy into an Icon movie. People would buy into, several characters that they want to put on screen, long as they were presented well.
And now you got me wanting to see Icon starring Michael B. Jordan. I think that would, holy God. And
Yeah,
plus,
Icon and yeah, whoever they want to cast as Rocket, I'd be for it.
and just like with the Shazam film, even though you didn't see Cavill, it was some dude dressed in the suit. I mean, Superman could totally show up in that film, and it could just be a matter of the crossing of the multiverse kind of thing, or maybe you just set Icon in the regular DC universe and say, screw the multiverse stuff. We're not doing that here. We've never talked. I mean, they talk about it in the TV shows all the time, and they suggested it in the films, but you don't necessarily have to do it. You could just make an Icon film and just cross him up. And then he becomes an established part of canon moving forward, and he could be in Justice League perhaps. And if you didn't want to do any of that, just make a standalone. Because man, you could go so far, and I think we've suggested here on the show, you could go so far as to say DC's better served to just make standalone films where they're not worrying about sequels or building universes or whatever, because they've proven they're not the best at that. Let's just be honest. So maybe a standalone Icon film, and hey, if it makes money, maybe we'll do a part two. I don't know. Maybe that should be their MO moving forward, man, because it seems like, again, I go back to the start and stop, man.
Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I think they are really leaving money on the table by not making a Vixen movie. And I've
Oh,
thought that
yeah.
for years. There are no black women superhero movies. Um, so they could have easily made a Vixen movie. Vixen has a very interesting power base. You could there's so many interesting things you could do with that story if you wanted.
You're forgetting
Um,
Catwoman, man. I'm just saying.
oh boy, that movie. That movie. Oh, yeah. So I mean, there are things they can do, and I think that's why, again, my immediate response to it was wasn't why are we doing Black Superman? It was like, okay, why are we doing Superman again? There's so
Yeah.
many other things you could do other than it.
Yeah. And I'll go back to what we talked about earlier. I don't think they get very specific with where Calvin's ship lands. It is a black couple. They're dressed like it's the 60s, and it's in like you can tell it's a sedan, not a truck. So they're not farmers. And there's industry in the background, but I can't say there's city in the background. Well, maybe there is. Yeah, there's like industry, as if it's in like the warehouse district or something, and they just
Maybe it's Detroit.
oh well, hey, you don't know, it could be. Look, I guess anything's possible. Dude, when I think about comics, when I think about anything, I apply real world stuff to it. Like if I'm going to go see it, because I'm thinking, oh, this is interesting, but because I like to imagine how things would look actually existing around me. So maybe I should cut that out, because who cares where the ship lands or stuff. But in my head, I'm going back to, yes, but you can't land it in the middle of New York, and Detroit would be tough unless, so the Midwest makes perfect sense. Like, and I see, were Siegel and Schuster really thinking that when they wrote the story? I don't know if the answer to that, but it seems like the perfect combination. We're going to land a rocket in broad daylight, not in the black of night, in broad daylight. Well, listen, Joe, we got to land it in the Midwest where it's, how many people would actually even see the thing, and it's out desolate, and it's just country roads. There's no technology out there. There's no electricity. There's no nothing or whatever. And I don't know if that conversation ever actually happened, but it makes sense if it did. I don't know. I guess I'm being too literal about all this. Tom Clark's 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information, and tell them that Tom Clark's 6M podcast sent you. I like the suit that Calvin Ellis wears. It's a different take on the Superman suit. The S shield, the colors are inverted, so the S is yellow and the background is red. I dig it. I think it looks pretty cool. And so the idea of, yeah, all right, so Henry Cavill's pretty hunky. We can agree on that. He's dreamy, okay? Uh, and Christopher Reeve was dreamy too. I'll just be honest. But he did so well as Clark Kent. He could hide. He had the fedora, the glasses, the suit was, I mean, you could tell the way he carried himself, his expressions. He was the perfect Clark Kent. Henry Cavill, maybe not so much because he's so freaking hunky. And I don't think he really embodied Clark Kent. Could Michael B. Jordan embody, if he is indeed Clark Kent, what kind of Clark Kent do you think we're looking at? The guy with the glasses who's nerdy and he's trying not to stand out. He's dropping stuff and he's shy around, Lois Lane. What do you think we'll get with that?
I don't know, man. That's actually very interesting. I don't know how do you do a secret identity in the same way with Black Clark or even a Calvin, because again, it's hard to make a black man unassuming. And I mean, that's not to say that there aren't unassuming black men in the world.
I
There are,
get you. Yeah.
but just to the world at large, there's always going to be a way that people view them. So it's I don't know. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't think that they should try and make him overly cartoonish like the original Donner films. I don't know if that would work. The reason Cavill didn't work for me as Clark is so funny to me, because it's just like they had this guy go through all this stuff where he was traveling the world. We didn't see if he actually went to school. He was like, I don't know, he was just like a wanderer. He was like going and going to bars and stuff, and he had like a beard, like what? And then all of a sudden, he discovers his powers, goes and he has this big fight with um um Zod
Yeah.
in Metropolis, destroys Metropolis, and everybody sees it when you're of camera phones. Everybody sees him destroying this city, and then he just shows up at the end, with a button up and goes and applies for a job at the Daily Planet as a reporter. Like none of that happened with glasses. It's like okay, but huh? Did he even go to school for journalism? We never got any idea of that.
Good point.
Uh, like no, we just most of the people in the city have film footage of your face now. You can't just come into the city the same week as this other person that looks very similar to you, had this big fight in the city, and just decide, nope, hey, I'm just some unassuming reporter guy. And then, 2 movies later, hey, that guy that looks very similar to me is dead, and I am also dead.
And he didn't even
Total conclusion.
yeah.
Total coincidence.
And his hair like barely changes. Like as Clark, his hair is like I'm trying to remember how it's such a weird conversation about the dude's hair, but I I mean, how much did it really change from Clark to Superman? Because I honestly I can't even remember right now.
He doesn't look that different as
No.
Clark. He just puts glasses on, and he still looks like the same person. But see, all of that works in the goofiness of like the comic book and that world of going. No, he just put glasses on and slicked his hair back, and see, he's different. And
Right.
of course, he's bumbling and he's uncoordinated and all these things. But when you add all this serious tone to the movie and you take that stuff out, then it becomes it makes it even more transparent that that concept doesn't work. Um, and so I mean, especially when they came back in Batman versus Superman, and we realized, yeah, he's a reporter, and nobody has questioned any of this or where he came from. It's just weird. It doesn't really work.
Yeah, you can't exactly walk into a metropolitan newspaper, allegedly one of the biggest in the country, and just get a job as a reporter. But every time we see Clark Kent, even in the Christopher Reeve version, he just kind of shows up. All right, Lois, Mick Clark, he's a new reporter. I'm like, how'd this happen? What's his background? Writing for the Smallville Gazette? Is that what broke him into the Daily Planet? Like, how's that work? And
Right. And I mean, we wouldn't question that if you didn't go out of your way to make Man of Steel this grounded movie. If you're gonna make it a grounded movie, you have to, dot your dot your I's and cross your T's.
dude, I love the way you put that because you said it perfect. They went out of their way to ground it. They did everything that Tom's been talking about for 40 minutes. Well, I'm trying to put this in the real world. They totally did that. So maybe my complaint is nonsense because while it sounds good on paper, does grounding it too much in reality hurt it, you think?
I think it does because I mean, it's an intrinsically outlandish idea. He's an alien that somehow doesn't have any alien features. He looks human. And he is just unassuming. You know, everything works the same as humans, other than his powers. And then on top of that, like, you know, he's this massive man who, you know, again, he just slicks his hair back and puts some glasses on, and nobody notices who he is. Um, Wears a bright blue and red costume under his suit. Nobody ever sees this. it just it works, but again, it's comic books, so you know you're supposed to suspend disbelief. And but that only works if you don't try to take this thing too seriously. Once you try to start taking it too seriously, it's like, well, no, all of this falls apart because this isn't meant to be taken seriously.
So maybe the point that you and I are talking about, a lot of fans are debating right now about whether or not he should be black. Maybe I don't know. On one hand, I say everything you just said is 100% correct, and and the grounding it doesn't matter. On the other hand, you are opening up a whole other dialogue by saying our Superman is African American. Well, he's black. You see him because he's not really African American because he's from a different planet, and yeah, and they, by the way, they all speak English, which is interesting as well. Um,
Yes.
they all have haircuts. They all shave, so they're into grooming on Krypton. They cover themselves up. They cover up all their reproductive organs if they have them, which we assume they have. So yeah, you're right. On
I
its
mean,
face, it's a very odd story. I mean, can you have it both ways with this film?
sort of. I think on some levels you have to suspend disbelief because it's a fantasy. But on some levels, when you introduce things like race to it, again, if you're going to change the race of a character, um, it cannot be just a cosmetic change. You can't just decide, okay, well, we're going to make this a black man, and we're not going to change any of the perception around this character or anything, and we're not going to discuss any different, social topics. Then, okay, why are you doing it then?
Right. And back to the Michael B. Jordan thing about whether or not he can be Clark Kent. I guess my major point to that whole bit was I think we've only ever seen him be cool. Like, I don't recall a movie he's been around. I'm like, man, he's the classiest guy. He's the coolest guy. He's awesome. He's a badass. He's just, he's just got style, man. And then I'm trying to picture that guy in a suit that's wrinkled, his tie's crooked, his glasses are bent, and he's trying to play an idiot. He's a good actor. I'm sure he could pull it off. But from an aesthetic point of view, it's like, would people around him buy that? Because you're like, man, first of all, he's in such great shape. He's a good looking guy. Like, I don't know, man. That's the nerd in me coming out, though, dude, for sure. We don't know what the plans are here, Phil. Obviously, if there even are plans, we're kind of just taking this conversation and doing a what if, which is cool. So since we're doing a what if, let's fantasy cast this sucker because I'm curious what you think. Because I got an idea for Denzel for I just gave it away. I got an idea for Lex Luthor. All right. All right, it's Denzel Washington. That's it. I'm not taking that from anybody. But my thought is, if you're gonna, I don't know if I'm saying an all black cast, but let's say that Lex is black also. Denzel's my choice. So I'll throw it back to you. Do you do an all black cast, a la Black Panther, or do you just say he's black and everyone around him remains the ethnicity that they were from the beginning? How do you handle that?
Um, I think there's a way that you can do this. You can kind of have some cast members uh as black, and you can have some of them remain white or other ethnicities. Um, I actually think if you're going to use Denzel, you should use Denzel and make him his dad. I think it's such a
Hmm.
interesting, like, because when I think like Superman movies and his dad in the movies, and I think before we got on, he talked about how striking Marlon Brando is,
Yeah.
and I think Denzel is striking in the same way, and he's such a known and well known actor. I think making him Calvin's dad is an interesting relationship.
I like that. I dig that actually. I was thinking more like grand scale because we'd probably only get Denzel in a certain part of the movie. But maybe that's what it should be. Like we got Kevin Costner as Henry Cavill's dad as Jonathan Kent, but you only got to see him in some of the movie, and then he you know gets sucked up by the tornado. I think. Still the dumbest. Dude, Clark can move at the speed of light. It could have saved him. Nobody would have known. And he's standing there like, no, you can't. You gotta go, son. And I'm like, screw that. If my kid's super, I'm like, come save me now.
It's the most contrived. It's the most contrived thing in the entire movie. First of all, the reason that he goes out of his way, he goes back to save the dog from the car, right?
Yes, the dog.
He goes to save the dog, and he hurts his ankle, and the dog gets all the way back to the rest of where his family is, and so he's just standing there in the middle of the street, and the tornado's gonna get him. And I mean, just to have something as big and catastrophic as a tornado be the thing that kills him. It's just so overwrought. It's so ridiculous. And so the tornado gets him, and that's just as far as the tornado goes. It goes in other direction. It doesn't destroy anything around where everybody else is crowded under this rubble. It's so ridiculous. It's like, why did they think this was a good idea? This doesn't make any sense. And then just his whole going, no, you have to be better than that. You have to be controlled. But what lesson is he learning by letting you die? What is the lesson here?
Yeah.
What what is the lesson that he has to know when and when not to use his powers? Isn't using his powers to save people the very hallmark of the character? What
Yes.
are you teaching him at that point by saying, "Don't save me"? It's so stupid. It's the stupidest scene in the movie.
You knew, hey, you knew you were in trouble when that moment happened in that film. Admit it. And I know you're okay with Man of Steel. I know you're not in love with it, but you're okay with it.
I didn't like Man of Steel. I didn't like Man of Steel. I didn't outright hate it.
Right.
But boy, that was one of those scenes in that movie where I was just like, whose idea was this? This just doesn't make any sense. Like nothing about it makes sense.
There's two takeaways from this, kids. One, God was out to get Jonathan Kent. Okay. It's like you said, he didn't take anything else. He just took Superman's daddy. All right. Second part of this, not since John Wick has a dog played such a pivotal role in an origin story, in any story. Like, if not for that freaking dog, Jonathan Kent would still be alive today. I don't know. It's yeah. And so okay. So I know what you said about, and I agree with you. Like, it's the creators, you got to hand it to the right people. But after that conversation and the good hearty belly laugh that you had, we're trusting Black Superman with this studio? Like, with these guys that cut off their nose to spite their face, who make Justice League and go, oh, it looks pretty good. It's terrible. Like, and now Zack Snyder, it's 170 million, whatever the amount is, to redo it. Oh, let's go do it the way I wanted to do it. Do-overs in Hollywood. My God in heaven. What are we talking about? Like, I don't know if I trust them to get this right. Regardless of how good Jordan is, regardless of how good Abrams is, there's going to be a lot more people attached to this than just those two cats. I don't think I trust anybody to get this right, if I'm being straight with you.
Well, I don't know. I think if you're going to do a Black Superman, bring in Ta-Nehisi Coates, and bringing in someone that's black to write it is a step in the right direction at least.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I don't know what to think of the entire thing. I don't know what to think of the production of this thing. I don't know. This could be this could end up being really interesting, or it could be a disaster. I don't know.
I mean, I definitely don't want it to flop. It's okay if critics are mixed. I don't really care about that stuff. I don't want it to flop. I don't want any comic book film to flop, kids. I never wanted any DC film to flop. I still don't, because the more comic book films that flop, the that spells danger, danger, Will Robinson, for comic book films in general. And I don't want that as a fan. I want these things to be around for so my great grandkids can enjoy them one day. So I don't, for that reason alone, I don't want it to fail. And I like everybody involved that we've heard about. Um, I'm rewatching the Donner original Superman right now, and it's so charming. That's my biggest takeaway from this film, is it's so charming. And I know a lot of it has to do with it was the first. I mean, how many times can you say this is the first? You could say Iron Man, Christopher Reeve Superman, Tobey Maguire Spider Man, the first X Men, Blade. You know, you could say this is the first. This kicked off so and so. But Superman kind of kicked. And isn't it interesting how Superman was the first? We're coming full circle here on the show. Superman was the first. And when it comes to the films, Superman was the first. He was the one to kick everything off. And it's still, dude, this film still holds up. There's some stuff about it that's hokey and dated. But as a whole, the effects aren't bad. And the film pretty much still holds up. I mean, if they move forward with this, I would want it to be good, obviously. But I would want it to have some charm. I would want it to have some life to it. I'd want it to have, I don't know, man. What direction do you think they would take with this? Would it, I don't know. I guess we have to wait and see, right? But would it be more of a socially conscious production, or would it be, we found a niche, we're going to put some humor in it, we're going to make it cool at the same time? Do you think it could be a mix of all those things?
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if they don't, do too much social commentary here, I think the big thing is they have to do something different. If they come straight in and they do the same origin story,
Yeah.
it's exactly the same. He's from Kansas, and then you do the exact same, dynamic between him and Lex, and it's the same, bad guy we've seen in every Superman movie. It's the same kind of, conflict, then it's gonna feel formulaic. So I feel like they've got to change that up. They've got to introduce a different villain if they can.
Ooh.
They've got to introduce a different backdrop. And I mean, the thing is, Superman has a strong role gallery. And I think they've only scratched the surface in terms of his movies. There's so many so many Superman villains we haven't seen on a big screen yet. And so, I mean, that in itself gives them a lot to play with. Um, but yeah, that's my big thing. I hope they don't just go and just do everything they always do and just plop a black character in the middle of it.
That's a great way to put it. It does kind of seem like it's a strong possibility that everything will be identical to what we've always seen before, and now here's Black Superman. I don't want that either. I want it to be something different. Is this the time for Brainiac? Because man, we've been teased with this for years about, oh, he's going to be the heavy in this Superman film, and then those Superman films never happen. I mean, we've seen him on TV, we've seen him on Krypton on the Sci-Fi Channel, we've seen him in animation. Should Brainiac be the heavy in this film?
I think it would be a great time to use Brainiac. There's other characters they can use even if they don't use Brainiac. I mean they could go the Metallo route. I
Mm.
don't know if that necessarily works. Um, but yeah, Brainiac is probably, if you don't use Lex, Brainiac, in my opinion, is the second most interesting Superman character.
Yeah, I agree with that because he's got connections. He's got ties to the origin of Kal El. Um, I was going with Denzel as Lex for a few different reasons. Number one, I love him. Number two, I love to see him play the villain. Um, Number three, I think there's an interesting commentary there for that specific character because Lex already hates Superman because Superman is not from here, because he poses a threat that no one else sees but him. But you could add in the commentary also of, All right. So in the books, Lex comes from a wealthy family, but let's say this Lex fought and scratched his way up. He came from a poor upbringing, and he's a self-made man, self-made billionaire. But he went through racial prejudice. He went through, bad things as a kid, growing up as a teenager, in college, as a young man, even as an adult, went through racism and just everywhere he went. And then here's Superman, who's kind of handed the world and people adore him and admire him. And he's looking at this guy saying, "Oh, I see. Okay. You didn't have to endure what I endured." I feel like there's a very interesting story that can be done there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that they should go the route of having Lex as a white man that hates this black Superman character because he's from somewhere else. The context of that's kind of wild when you really think about it. And I don't think you need to do that and then have your audience questioning, is Lex racist? That's yeah. I don't think you want to jump in that water.
And it's funny but that you mentioned that because the Grant Morrison stuff, um, he's fighting Lex and his face is covered in shadow. You know it's gonna be Black Superman, but you don't know because it's just interesting the way the art's handled. And he says to him, uh, basically, "Lex, what are you doing? Why are you bothering after all this time? No prejudice can run that deep." And Lex says, "I don't care what they say about me." He says, "I am not a racist. It's everything else about you I hate. Don't ever forget that." And I'm like, I'm on page 2 of the book, and they had Lex Luthor telling me that he's not a racist on page 2 of the book. And that's okay. It's an interesting take. But I'm like, on page 2 of the book, Lex Luthor's telling me this maniacal evil genius slash billionaire industry tycoon is telling me that he's not racist. I'm like, they addressed it in the opening shot of the book. They just went ahead and tackled it right there. So it's almost like, dude, if you do this movie, you have to talk about it. I don't know. Part of me says, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's get this out there. Let's open up a conversation. And everybody that hates the fact that he's black, good. Let them hate it. Let it make people uncomfortable. Maybe it should. But then the comic book fanboy in me sees and remembers terrible comic book movies from the past and says, anytime you deviate from the character, no matter what that means, look at that second that new take on Fantastic Four. They deviated from the characters to the point. I'm not even talking about Jordan right now, but they changed the backstories, they changed the relationships, they changed all this other stuff. And it's like, we see what happened with that film. Am I being unfair here or what?
It just depends on how they do it. They've deviated from a lot of things with other reboots, and they work. I'm not a huge fan of Amazing Spider-Man. I know some people like those Spider-Man movies. Those things it deviated, but there are things in them that work.
Yes.
To that end, the MCU Spider-Man movies are not, you know, what isn't a traditional take on Spider-Man. It's still very much grounded in his time in high school, like the Ultimate comics are. Um, but just having Aunt May look so young is jarring.
Yeah.
But it works. And so I think, long as you got a story that works, then half of your battle is done. I think some people are going to rail against it no matter what.
A young hot Aunt May is good because you got Downey hitting on her all the time. So that's good. That's why that works. Uh, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know, man. As fans, we tend to tackle subjects, especially on this show. Sometimes we'll tackle subjects before they've even become a thing, before they're even fully formed or fully produced or even made at that point. But it's what we do, man. As fanboys, we discuss things, not just characters, but situations, stories, opinions, moods, trends, everything you could possibly imagine. It's who we are, man. It's what we do. Um, so, despite who's what and what they decide to do with it, do you have anybody that you'd like to see in this film, in terms of the classic Superman ensemble cast? Anybody that you'd like to see that maybe hasn't had a turn in something like this before?
Hmm.
I mean, obviously Perry White would have to be an older guy. He's the experienced. He's the vet. Um, I mean, you could even say from Man of Steel, from a lot of things.
Lawrence Fishburne.
Lauren, I was blanking on his name. He's done comic book stuff plenty of times. I mean, I don't know. Part of me says just keep him. I don't know.
I didn't have a problem with him in that movie. I just, I just thought that it just jumped to, oh, Will Clark's a journalist now. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't know that I have anybody cast. I think, because it all depends on, I don't know how much of, Calvin Ellis's world is the same.
very
Um,
true.
so I don't know how I would cast this. I definitely think they need to narrow down a villain for this thing. If they're gonna go with Brainiac, that makes a lot of sense. But I think it would be a mistake to use Lex or Zod again.
And all right, so I'll hit you with this. It's real hard to say the name Lennon without following it by McCartney. Just like it's kind of hard to say Superman without following it with Lois. So who's your Lois Lane for this film? Because there's got to be a Lois.
Hmm,
Is that harder, maybe?
it is. I don't know. Um, this is all interesting because I just don't know how much of this is gonna be like any other Superman movie we've ever seen. Um, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean,
If
even if you
he
just get her in the last scene, there would have to be an expectation of a Lois Lane in some form or fashion, even if it is a different Earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, but hey, then you're asking yourself, what are they gonna do with this character? Are they gonna do an interracial relationship? Are they going to make, Lois a black character? What are they gonna do?
Interesting. Yeah.
Um, I don't know.
Yeah. That. I wish we knew more.
Yeah, I think I wish we had more information on, you know, the story that they're gonna do with this thing, and I mean, because there's so many questions that you get with just making Superman black. There's so many things about his supporting cast that changes. You can't just go, okay, well he's black now. Okay, well, okay.
Yeah.
Like, did he still date Lana in high school? Did he still have all of the same experiences in high school? I don't know.
I mean, we saw Tom Welling's Clark Kent get hazed. I mean, big time in Smallville. I mean, dude, they hung him like he was a scarecrow in a cornfield and painted an S on his chest. I mean, that's some pretty freaking harsh, you know, criminal offense kind of haze there, man. That's freaking insane. Like, I mean, how far do you go with depicting this with a black Superman? How far do you go with? I mean, that was just TV, and at the time, it's. I like Smallville. I watched every season. And it's part of the story. But if you look back on that, that's intense. You know what I mean? It's for TV and for the CW especially. Like, I don't know. The hazing
Yeah,
part of this, you would think would be again if you're putting them in the Midwest and predominantly white town with old fashioned ideas. If that's the route they go, you'd have to think he would bump into something ugly at some point.
right, and that's why I'm saying that the imagery of that, if you're hazing this black teenager, the imagery of that immediately changes. So
Right.
I don't know. Um, I don't know. There's so many questions with this that I am very interested to see how they're going to handle it.
Yeah. I'm not opposed to it. I think if it's, and I don't want to sound like that guy because I'm not that guy. But I think if you went Calvin Ellis and you did that particular Earth, and then by the end of the film, you've crossed him up with Henry Cavill shows up in some form or fashion, even if it's just a brief cameo, or it's Bruce Wayne, it's somebody from the universe that we know, then you're making the statement, hey, we might see more of the Superman at some point. And, you know, it, had they just created the Calvin Ellis character for this film, and it was just being done for that sake, I would get maybe why some of the backlash. But if you're telling me, look, this is Calvin Ellis, he's already appeared in comics, he's already been written by a great comic writer, he's a fully formed idea, fully formed character, and now we're going to focus the movie on him. I can get behind that. I can totally get behind that because you've got a history. You've already got source material to draw from instead of we're just going to make this thing from scratch. I can digest that a lot easier than I can with them upturning not the status quo. That's a bad way to put it, but you know what I mean. Like, why not just move forward with this new character and see where we can go with it?
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, kids, we don't know what's going to happen. I think we've made that abundantly clear. But it's going to be an interesting thing to see. Again, I'm not opposed to it. I like everybody involved that I know about so far, and with any luck, the creators attached can make this thing work. I don't know if would it work better as a TV show. Would it? I don't know. DC's track record with TV shows and going to films, they tend to not do that. They'll just, the TV universe is the TV universe. Of course, I say that, and they've crossed up Flash before, so anything's possible. I don't know, man. Dude, do you think this should have been a baby step? Should this have been, let's introduce him on TV first, maybe in the new Superman and Lois show, and then we'll go feature a film with maybe another actor?
I mean, if you're gonna go that route and make him your main character for your movie universe, I mean, might as well jump in head first if you're gonna do something like that.
Right. Yeah, I get that. Might as well pull the trigger and not pull it at all, right? Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens next. So I'm here for it. We'll see. So, Phil, on the topic that we know very little about to this point, and we're only speculating, I will get your last word on Black Superman. What do you think?
This could be a chance to do something really interesting with the character. I hope that that's where we're going. I have faith in Ta-Nehisi Coates that he's going to give them the best script that he's got, and it's up to the studio to put out an interesting product.
Yeah. Again, I don't know where my level of trust is with Warner Brothers when it comes to the DC stuff, but fingers crossed, kids. It's all we can do as fans. Fingers crossed. We'll see what happens next. Hopefully, we'll be doing a show a year from now, give or take, and it'll be, wow, let's talk about this amazing Superman film we just saw. This thing is going to win all the awards and have like 6 sequels because it was awesome. I'm not even making that up. I hope it works. I hope everything they do with this works. Hey, man, you never know. This thing could reinvent the DC extended universe. I'd be fine with that. Yeah, I say make it happen because, rocky start to begin with. But if we can reinvent it, why not do it? We'll see what happens, folks. Stay tuned for that. And that is Black Superman. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.